I would now like to turn the call over to your host for today, Mr. Trent Frazier. Sir, you may begin.
Thank you very much, and welcome to this afternoon's U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Women in Law Enforcement webinar. We're very excited about this afternoon's webinar. My name is Trent Frazier. I'm the Executive Director for the Office of Academic Engagement with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. My office's job is to support the mission of Homeland Security by helping to build bridges with the academic community. And in fact, to date, events like this afternoon's are a critical part of our work to help extend that bridge with each of you. I want to thank our participants from the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the team here at ICE for their help and partnership in helping to make today's events possible. Before we get started, I want to walk through some of the instructions for this afternoon's webinar. If you haven't already, we would encourage you to log in to the Adobe Connect platform so that you can view all of today's presentations. The instructions should have been included in the invitation for this afternoon's webinar, and you'll find them there to connect to today's Adobe chat room. All participants will be muted on the phone throughout the webinar, but we do want to hear from you. So you'll find during the session a chat box that allows you to ask questions of the participants. We'll collect your questions and present them as part of the Q&A session later this afternoon. All entries in the chat box are private and will only be seen by our online moderators. And of course, if we're unable to answer all of the questions for this afternoon, we will provide those in written form in an email for all participants following this afternoon. Also, I want to highlight that we do want to hear from you on the webinar itself. You'll see in the upper right-hand corner a series of polling questions that we use to collect information on how the webinar worked and what we can do to improve these events for future participants. Please take a couple of moments to fill those out. And while you're taking a look at those polling questions, I want to give you a quick overview of this afternoon's session. We're going to talk a little bit about the mission for U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and our panelists are going to talk to you about their work as women and law enforcement officers in the various law enforcement directorates across ICE. We're excited about our panelists today, and we think we've got a lot of information we can share with you, after which we'll be providing you with additional information on the application process and hiring process for immigration. We'll finish this afternoon's webinar with an open question and answer session, during which we'll be able to give you some additional information as questions arise. And with that, I want to introduce our first panelist, Natalie Asher, the Assistant Director for Field Operations for ICE Enforcement and Removal Operations, and Janice Ayala, Director of Joint Task Force Investigations, to talk a little bit about the mission of ICE and their role as law enforcement officers with the agency.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for dialing in. We're excited to share with all of you the exciting career path of federal law enforcement, and in particular with ICE. I was asked to touch upon briefly the mission of ICE. We are an agency that protects America from essentially cross-border threats and crimes and illegal immigration, and essentially protecting you all for national security and public safety. ICE was created in 2003 following the merger of U.S. Customs and Immigration and Naturalization Service. Today we are approximately 20,000 strong in a workforce made up of law enforcement personnel and support who are assigned to approximately 400 offices throughout the United States and international. The makeup of ICE is primarily three branches of directorates, if you will. One is Homeland Security Investigations, the second is Enforcement and Removal Operations, and thirdly, the Office of Principal Legal Advisors, our attorneys. Management and administration is also very important in our agency in that they help us with a $6 billion budget in helping us in doing our jobs. I am with Enforcement and Removal Operations that throughout this seminar you will hear as termed as ERO. And you will learn from our fantastic officers who will be on the panel today about our mission. And primarily we are with the charge to enforce the immigration laws as they currently are, again, in the interest of promoting national security and public safety.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So my name is Janice Ayala, and if you're looking at some of the presentation material, you look at Homeland Security Investigations, and you may wonder how we're different than any other law enforcement or federal agencies such as FBI or DEA or some of the other CJIS and so forth. Well, the difference is that we as a agency are not focused on one particular threat, such as drugs or national security. We're focused on everything that touches our international borders. So that's drug smuggling, money laundering, cyber intrusions, there's cyber crimes, there's child pornography, and there's export crimes. And why is that? It's because all is movement of international, either physically or on our computers, virtual movement. So that gives us broad authority, over 400 statutes, and makes life, I think, a little bit more interesting and makes you a little bit more well-rounded when it comes to your investigative abilities. I started out in law enforcement, or really in my civilian government service about 26 years ago. I came on as an intel analyst, and the reason I was able to get this job was because of my background in the military as an intel analyst and Spanish linguist. One of the aspects of this job is mobility, and I have moved around a lot. I started my career in Louisiana. I moved on to Washington, D.C., and then became a special agent. I served in Puerto Rico as a special agent, was in El Paso, worked for our internal affairs component, and then afterwards was on Laredo at the border as a DSAC for over 5.5 years. I then moved on to Washington, D.C. I served in several senior executive service positions, and I have to tell you that along with that experience, one of the most important things for me in being well-rounded is to give back in some way. So I've engaged in a lot of community service and a lot of organizations that I think are support systems for me personally. And I think one of the most proudest one is as a senior law enforcement advisor to women in federal law enforcement. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you. That's some very useful information. We want to actually give you a brief overview that just kind of highlights the various missions that you've heard both Natalie and Janice talk about in their opening remarks. So we're going to play a short video for you that just kind of highlights the ICE mission and gives you a sense. Great, welcome back. So we're very excited to have with us Assistant Field Office Director Marissa Flores from the Los Angeles Field Office and Deportation Officer Aisha Ramirez from the New York Field Office. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Marissa Flores, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself. My current position is in an acting capacity as a Deputy Field Office Director for Enforcement and Removal Operations in the Los Angeles Field Office. I first started my career at a very young age. I was in high school, and my mom wanted to keep me, I would say, maybe out of trouble, and brought me to work with her for another federal agency. So I had an opportunity very young to be exposed to a law enforcement mission. The second I walked through the door, I'm 16 years old, I was in love and hooked, and I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I continued that path in college, where I had an opportunity within the Immigration and Naturalization Service as a summer intern, or a student intern, where I learned the ropes of a deportation officer, and again had an opportunity to see what at that time INS could provide for me as an opportunity in college. And once I graduated from college, I was promoted to a deportation officer position. So again, in a very young age, in my 20s, I arrested criminals on a regular basis. I traveled all over the world, removing bad guys from the country. So it was a very rewarding experience that I had at a very young age. After several years of being a deportation officer in the field, I had an opportunity to come to Washington, D.C., to be exposed to other aspects of my job, to learn leadership responsibilities, to work with various mentors and leaders here in Washington, D.C. I continued my path of working hard, making sacrifices, being very dedicated to my job, and continue to promote, thanks to, again, many mentors and leaders here at Washington, D.C. that I had the privilege of working for and representing. Soon after, I would say, my detail opportunity that was supposed to be 30 days, this has probably happened to many of us in this room, turned into a 6-year assignment. And I learned that it was time as a leader in Washington at headquarters for ERO to get back to the field, because a lot had changed in 6 years. So I saw that was something that I needed to do, is get back out to the troops in the field and make a difference there, to represent them there as a leader. I left ERO headquarters, working as an ERO Deputy Chief of Staff for the director at that time, and brought my experience here at headquarters to our officers in the field, where I've worked as assistant field office director for the past 6 years, gaining experience in various operational components. Again, continued working hard, continued earning opportunities, where I currently serve, as I mentioned, as a deputy field office director in Los Angeles, where I manage and oversee training and support operations for the entire field office. I also wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of what a day in the life is for me, because it varies. Once you're in the field as a line officer, it can be very exciting, and all those experiences as I had as a younger officer have transitioned to a senior leader, where it's mostly in an office, but it's very busy, it's very high level. I'm running from meeting to meeting, juggling multiple tasks, very high level assignments, but also taking the time, finding the time to manage, work and life, and finding the time to do also other things that I enjoy, representing my agency, training for running events, representing my agency, and training for shooting competitions, which is very important. You have to find that time to manage your very busy work life, as it can get sometimes with the things that you enjoy. And recruiting events, I enjoy being a nice recruiter and being out at colleges and universities, representing my agency with various groups.
Thank you. And Aisha.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Aisha Ramirez. I'm a deportation officer in the New York field office. My interest in law enforcement started when I was a junior in college, working part-time for American Airlines as a passenger service representative. As a passenger service representative, I was responsible to translate cases for immigration inspectors who were conducting interviews on persons that were inadmissible to the United States. Being able to have a first-hand experience and a working relationship with the officers, I would inquire more about the job, and they would advise me of job announcements and openings when they became available. Eventually, I applied. In 2002, I was hired as an immigration inspector at JFK, where I continued to translate cases, but also now had the opportunity to create my own cases and work with them to completion, as well as determine admissibility of passengers and people entering the United States. In 2003, when the Department of Homeland Security was formed, we became Customs and Border Protection officers. And it was at that time that I was provided the opportunity to become a counterterrorism response team member, where we would elicit sensitive information from passengers who were considered potential terrorists or associates of terrorists attempting to enter the United States. I also worked on a specialized team intercepting passengers who were attempting to transport contraband and narcotics into the United States as well. In 2007, I became a deportation officer, and this is where my knowledge of immigration law actually cultivated. Although as a deportation officer, we apprehend, detain, and remove criminal aliens, my responsibilities also included to respond to inquiries, interact with attorneys, as well as communicate with consular officials. And we will also, and we still do, transport criminal aliens with egregious offenses back to their countries. Currently, I work with the Fugitive Operations Team, and it's my responsibility, along with my team members, to locate fugitives who have existing final orders of deportation, as well as persons who have committed crimes violating their status in the United States, and as well as locating foreign wanted criminals. My day can start as early as 5:30 in the morning. It could begin out in the field and eventually take us back into the office, where we would follow up on leads or investigations that we have started, or if we have arrested a person for the day, then it would consist of processing that person until we take them into custody. And my day can end anywhere from 5 to 6 o'clock in the evening.
Wow. Yeah, that's my day also never starts at 5 in the morning, but that's amazing. Thank you so much. I want to thank you both for your service and thank you for being here. It sounds like, I mean, with your diverse experience and the diversity of your background, there's just a lot of opportunity in the agency right now. So thank you so much for presenting with us. I also want to introduce a few folks from our Homeland Security Investigations Office. I want to introduce Special Agent Agita Fontaine from the Houston office and Special Agent Allison Carter Anderson from the Tampa office to join us here on stage. So, Agita, please just tell us a little bit about your work experience.
Good evening, ladies. My name is Agita Fontaine, and I'm a special agent with the Department of Homeland Security. A little bit about how I got here. When I was 16 years old, I was a foreign exchange student to Peru. I got really, really sick and had to go to the embassy and stay there and be under their care for a little while. And the experience that I got there, by them being so nice and so helpful to me, it actually planted a seed in me to where when I grew up, I knew I wanted to do what they did. I knew that I didn't know exactly what they did, but I knew I wanted to do something in the lines of working at an embassy and traveling abroad. So fast forward, I went to college, studied political science, and applied for the test to be a customs agent. I didn't pass the test at first, but I didn't let that stop me. I kept going at it. I studied. I went to the library. I got all the material that I needed to get to make sure that I passed the next go-round. So the next go-round I did. I took the test and passed it with flying colors. And it took me exactly 3 years from the time I took the test and passed it to the time I actually got hired. So one of the things I do want to tell you is please have patience in this position, if you apply for a position with us, because nothing comes immediately or it's not instant. You're going to have to wait to get what you want sometimes. I'm a mother, a wife, a community servant. I wear a lot of hats, sometimes all hats at the same time. My day starts usually at 4:30 in the morning, where I work out at 5 o'clock. After I work out, I go to work, where I am currently a program manager for a certified undercover operation in Houston, Texas. Basically, a certified undercover agent is, I'm the person in the background providing support for clandestine investigations involving human trafficking, human smuggling, money laundering, and narcotics smuggling. I am also trained in firearms and defensive tactics because we do have to carry a gun, and we qualify with our guns four times a year. In a nutshell, being a program manager, I make sure that Homeland Security investigations follow the guidelines that are set forth by the government when dealing with cases involving undercover agents and confidential informants. I love what I do. I would highly encourage you guys to listen very carefully to what is being said at this webinar, and please apply so that you can be one of the elite that we are here on this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Agita. Allison.
Good afternoon. My name is Allison Carter Anderson, and I'm a special agent with Homeland Security Investigations. I'm currently stationed in the Tampa, Florida office. Growing up, being an agent wasn't even anything that entered my mind. I was absolutely convinced I was going to go to college and go to law school, and plans changed. After graduating with my undergraduate degree, I took a job in the private sector working in a law firm to kind of test out the environment and see if I liked it. And I quickly found that being inside all day and doing basically the same thing, going to the same place day after day, was not as exciting as I thought it was going to be. And a good family friend who was a U.S. Customs Special Agent told me that his agency was hiring and suggested that I apply, much to my father's chagrin because he was also an agent at the time. And after applying and passing the battery of exams and physical requirements for pre-employment, I was extended a hiring offer to go to the San Ysidro, California office, which is on the southwest border in Southern California. Now, having grown up in Florida, I didn't know where San Ysidro, California was, but I knew that after waiting a year and a half, I was more than happy to take the job offer, and I then headed off to our Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Brunswick, Georgia. While at our academy, I spent approximately 4.5 months learning all the basics I would need for my job, which included driving, interviewing skills, report writing, and also firearms and tactical training. Those basic skills that I learned in the academy gave me some basic preparation for the job that I faced when I went to our office in Southern California. While stationed in Southern California, I was tasked with investigating narcotics crimes at 3 busy land border crossings in Southern California. And I quickly found that every day had a new opportunity for adventure and a new challenge. And I was able to quickly develop many skills that I needed for my job and still use every day. Although I was far from home, I was able to develop a good support system, and through my investigations and through my other work activities, I got a lot of experience with conducting surveillance, conducting interviews of people, and taking cases for prosecution on a regular basis. After working in San Ysidro, I then had the opportunity to transfer to our Tampa office. And while stationed in our Tampa office, I have been involved in financial investigations and in narcotics investigations, and have had the opportunity to travel all over the United States and to Central and South America. I found my career so far to be a very rewarding experience where I'm challenged and where I have an opportunity to learn new things on a regular basis. We're in a unique position to gain new skills throughout our career, and that's one of the things I really enjoy about my job.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your service. I mean, a lot of your remarks today really just highlight the depth and breadth of experiences and opportunities that a career with ICE can offer. So thank you so much for being here. We truly appreciate it. And to talk a little bit more about the process and the application process and the process that we use here at Homeland Security for hiring, I want to welcome to the stage a couple of folks from the from the National Recruiting and Retention Program to talk a little bit more about the process for you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Patrice Curitan, and I work in the Office of Human Capital. Don and I will discuss the candidate checklist. I will go over items 1 and 2, which are the basic requirements for the criminal investigator and the deportation officer. I will also discuss the application process for both. Don will go over items 3 and 4, the hiring process for criminal investigators and deportation officers, and go over job announcements as well. The basic requirements for the criminal investigators and deportation officers are: you must be a U.S. citizen, have a valid driver's license, and be eligible to carry a firearm. Criminal investigators must be referred for selection prior to their 37th birthday, and deportation officers must be referred prior to their 40th birthday. Please note, there are waivers for certain military and federal law enforcement officers. You must be willing to travel, and males born after December the 31st, 1959, selective service registration is required. All positions require security vetting. You must satisfactorily complete a drug test. Once on board, employees are subject to random testing throughout their careers. The application process. Full-time entry-level positions for the criminal investigator and deportation officer at the GS 5 through 9 level are posted on USA Jobs. You should at least meet the minimum qualification on the occupational questionnaire. Your resume and supporting documentation is validated, and once validated, you will be referred for the special agent test battery and written sample for criminal investigators. In the near future, deportation officers will be required to submit writing samples as well. Now we're going to roll into our student programs. Additionally, we take applications for our student programs, which are Pathways, our paid internship, and Student Volunteers, which is non-paid. Both are announced through USA Jobs, and at times, our student volunteer positions are posted on school career web pages. At this time, I want to turn it over to Don, and he's going to go over items 3 and 4.
Thank you, Patrice. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Don Lupton. I'm going to talk about the hiring process for criminal investigators and deportation officers, and then, as Patrice said, I'll move into job announcements as well. So I'll start with the criminal investigators. The process is once you've made it through your application on USA Jobs and any additional things you need for that application, you'll be referred for a structured panel interview that will consist of 3 senior-level HSI management officials. They'll assess you on judgment, decision-making skills, emotional maturity, cooperativeness, sensitivity to the needs of others, and conscientiousness. Once you make it through that interview, you'll move on to a personal interview. During that personal interview, you'll talk about the HSI mission, criminal investigator duties, academy and training requirements, and job locations / life changes. Additionally, you'll have questions during that interview that will deal with the essential functions of the position. After you make it through that interview, then you'll be referred for a drug test and also a fitness test. That fitness test will encompass a kneel/stand test, push-ups, and a 5-minute cardiovascular endurance step test. After you make it through the fitness test, you'll move on to the actual physical. Appointment is contingent upon candidates passing medical exams. Candidates also must possess emotional and mental stability, and then you'll also be referred on for your background / security investigation. As Patrice mentioned earlier, all positions at ICE require vetting, and these security investigations can take from 2 weeks to 1 year. Now I'd like to talk about the deportation officers. While the processes are very similar in nature, there are a few differences. Once you make it through your USA Job application and you'll be referred to a panel interview. That'll consist of senior level officials with enforcement removal operations. They're going to gauge your critical thinking through various scenarios. You make it through that part of the process, you're going to be referred on for drug testing and once again a fitness test. And I'll reiterate that pertains to kneeling / stand test, push-ups, and a 5-minute cardiovascular endurance step test. You're going to go through the same medical requirements that you did for the criminal investigators, and that appointment is contingent upon candidates passing that medical exam. Also, you're going to have a background investigation, and again, I want to reiterate that it can take from 2 weeks to 1 year for you to go through your security investigation. Job announcements at ICE are based on staffing needs and requirements. I would like to put a plug in June. Department of Homeland Security will be hosting a Women in Law Enforcement Hiring / Recruitment event in Dallas, Texas. So I would encourage everybody to stay out on our websites for more information to come on that. For additional information on ICE careers in law enforcement, I would encourage you to check out our 2 links below, one for criminal investigators and one for our deportation officers. And then we also have some additional information and resources, ice.gov.careers. You'll find a load of information on that page about ICE careers. And I would strongly encourage you to follow us on Twitter, where you can receive periodic updates on ICE. Thank you.
Great, Don. Thank you. And Patrice, thank you so much. That's some really helpful information. We're about to move into the open question and answer period, but before we do, we actually did get some very specific questions that I think you're best positioned to answer before I let you go. When will ICE be hiring special agents and deportation officers in the near future?
So right now we have no set timetable for an actual vacancy announcement for us ourselves. However, as I mentioned, we will be hosting, or DHS will be hosting a Women in Law Enforcement event in Dallas, Texas in June.
Great, and we're going to make sure to get more information out after today's event for that as well. When applying for a position with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is there a mandatory requirement to sign a mobility statement?
There is no mobility agreement that's required for a position at ICE.
Great, thank you. Is law enforcement experience a requirement when applying for a position?
No, there's no requirement for law enforcement experience. When you put your application, it's based on education and experience, and it could be one or the other or both.
Great. What are the certification requirements an applicant must have in order to apply for positions in ICE?
There's no certification requirements for somebody to qualify or apply for an entry-level position.
And are international students that are eligible for OPT able to apply for any jobs or internships with ICE?
As Patrice stated earlier, for application to ICE, you must have a U.S. citizenship, so the answer is no.
Okay. What opportunities are available for individuals with physical limitations that are older than 45 or let's say 42 years old, for example, like me?
So I would, as we mentioned earlier, there are exceptions for 5-point vet preference eligibles, and also previous law enforcement, federal law enforcement personnel to apply for positions past those the age of 37 for the criminal investigator and 40 for the deportation officer. And when it comes to applying, it's based on the physical aspects. I would tell everybody, if you think you're qualified for the position, you need to apply and let the medical doctors sort it out to determine whether or not you meet the physical requirements for the position.
That's good advice. Are there internships where students can get a feel for the positions that have been discussed during today's session?
Donna will handle that.
Thank you.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, the best avenues would be to go through our Pathways student internship program or the student volunteer program, and please be on the lookout on USA Jobs for those.
Great, thank you. And again, thank you so much for being with us, being here with us today, and for your service. We are going to move into the open question and answer period. So if you're participating in today's call, please use the chat box for the live webinar session to enter your questions. We will try to work through those as quickly as we can. We did receive 10 questions in advance of today, and we're going to start with those questions for the open session. What is one of the best parts of your job? And I think we're going to wait for a few folks to arrive back up on stage. The best part of my job is getting to ask that question and wait for folks to come up on stage. Great, welcome back, and thanks again for participating with us today. So I'm going to start to my far left. Allison, what is one of the best parts of your job?
You know, I think one of the best parts of my job is actually just going to work, and it's such a kind of an odd answer, but every day is a different opportunity. No day is the same from day to day. Part of what makes our job so interesting and so challenging is because we have a lot of flexibility. We have a very broad range of authorities of investigative areas in HSI. So one of the things I love the most is that one day doesn't look exactly like the next.
Great. And Agita, what degree is best for a law enforcement career with ICE? And should I get a criminal justice degree?
You can get a degree in pretty much anything. We, as Homeland Security, we, like Allison said, we actually investigate a myriad of cases. We actually investigate drug smuggling, counter-proliferation. So any degree that you have, you can apply, and it will be very, very advantageous for you in this position.
Great, thank you. Marissa, question for you. Besides getting a degree, is there anything else that our participants can do to prepare for a law enforcement career before they graduate?
I would say my advice would be to make sure you do some research on the different career opportunities at ICE so that you can focus on what it is exactly that you're interested in doing, and try to mirror that with whatever course of study and what degree that you get. Also look into internships, even if they're unpaid, internships or any paid positions that you may find that you may be able to juggle, work while you go to school. It's important for you to get your foot in the door, start making connections, start getting the experience, and even in a non-law enforcement position before you transition potentially to a law enforcement position.
Can I interject?
Oh, please.
Another thing that I would recommend for you ladies to please review your social media. We do look at, or the hiring authorities do look at your social media, and we want to make sure that you want to make sure that you're representing yourself professionally. So kind of scrub it. If you know that this is a position that you want to do, scrub it and make sure that it's something that would be presentable to any hiring authority.
Great.
You know, I would also add to that, all four of us have talked about this, and I think this goes for the men and women that we work with. You can start working now on your physical fitness. Physical fitness is a requirement for all aspects of our jobs. So get into a PT training regime now.
Thank you. And Aisha, I want to start with you, but this is actually a question for all of our panelists. What are some of the challenges you have faced as a woman in law enforcement?
My biggest challenge was a few years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I didn't know how that would impact my position as a deportation officer. Not to mention, I work primarily in a male team. I'm one female in a group of 6, and just being able to express and see the support that I received once I expressed what I was about to go through. But my biggest challenge, I didn't know the impact that the surgery would have on my strength, and I was worried about how I would be able to conduct myself when I return, if I would still be capable of firing my firearms, be able to maintain my physical strength. You know, God forbid we get in an altercation and I have to use whatever defensive tactics that we've learned. But I did what I needed to do, because a lot of people were suggesting maybe I should go into a position that was not in the field, but I said I wanted to continue, so I did the extra work that I needed to do to strengthen myself and be able to maintain my physical standards, so this way I could protect my teammates as they protect me.
Great, thank you. Others?
Can't do anything after that. Can't say anything.
Oh, Aisha.
Sorry.
It's okay. No, thank you. That's really important, and it's really insightful because it just talks about the camaraderie that exists. I mean, one of the questions we actually received was, what's it like being in a mostly male office? Is there a sense of camaraderie? And I'll open that for the entire panel.
Absolutely.
There is, with my experience, I can only speak for myself, but in my office, we're just a part of the team. There's no, oh, you're a girl, or you're softer, or there's no discrimination. They treat us like we're one. As a matter of fact, one of my experiences, I'm from Louisiana and I'm a Southern girl, so I used to think that, well, I still think that men should do things for us. And I was on surveillance with a man, one of my counterparts, and I was driving, and I pulled up to a gas station. I looked over to him like, okay, you're gonna pump the gas? And he was like, no, not my car, So they treat us equally.
That's great.
My experience has been positive, but I will say that it hasn't always been easy. There were times where I really had to go above and beyond to prove myself to my male and female counterparts. It just makes you work harder and be sometimes more aggressive and more hungry, and just make sure that no one ever makes you feel like you're not good enough or you can't do something, because you can. We're all here to demonstrate that there's obviously very many women in our line of work. We hope to improve those numbers, and we hope that this is a start in that conversation to help you become one of us.
That's great. Thank you. Allison?
I'll add to that. We talk about working in teams, and in my office in Tampa, it's not out of the norm for us to spend a good portion of our career together working in the same office. And over time, that team that you work with eventually starts to feel like a family, where you are brothers and sisters who are really looking out for each other. And as law enforcement officers, we're in a unique position where the coworkers turn into friends, who turn into family, and we support each other after the job is over. We are constantly looking out for each other, and I think that's such a positive thing about working in our environment.
That's great. Thank you so much. So one question we just received from our participants, can any of our panelists suggest programs, seminars, or workshops for young women to attend where they could perhaps network as an avenue to help them get into law enforcement?
I'll take that one.
Thank you.
I highly recommend you get involved with your career services department at your colleges. Even if you've graduated, go back, make yourself known, and link with those class coordinators or the people that are over that. Because a lot of times the recruiters actually have a one-on-one relationship with the coordinators, and if there's a position or if there's an opportunity that comes up, they give them the heads up and they give them the posting before it actually is put out to everybody else. And if that's the case, and they know what you are worth, and they know what what your reputation is, then they can submit you for that position, and you can start applying before everyone else. So make sure that you connect with your school, your community service resources, any kind of programs like the Women in Law Enforcement or criminal justice committees at your colleges and universities. That's very important.
And also I would add, look out for future recruitment events. There will be information updated regularly on the ice.gov page, and make sure to come see us, because more than likely you're going to see some of us out there staffing these recruiting events. So keep an eye out for those events, come talk to us, and come ask us more questions.
That's really great advice. So we did get a couple of interesting questions from the chat box, and I want to ask each of you. If you could just tell us, what were your majors in college?
I love this question because people always kind of look at me a little bit crazy when I answer them, but I have a history degree with a minor in French. And that prepared me to do a lot of researching, writing, talking to people. So it gave me a good foundation, because as a special agent, so much of our life is writing reports. It really is. So that gave me a really good, solid foundation in writing clearly and effectively.
I have a political science degree with a minor in Spanish.
I have a Spanish degree with an advanced degree in forensic sciences, so I will also encourage people looking to get a language degree. It's very important, especially at ICE, since we deal with very diverse populations from all over the world.
I had a government degree with a minor in international relations.
Great, thank you. Since I think many of you highlighted the importance of this, do you need a second language to pursue a career with ICE?
A second language isn't required, but it's definitely beneficial. With the ERO program, you will be required to have Spanish classes at the end of your training. There's a 5-week Spanish session.
Great, thank you. Can you, for our special agents today, if you could just share a little bit about some of the tasks that you routinely perform as special agents? Pumping the gas, obviously, that's certainly one of them, and we highlight that.
Because we have such a broad array of crimes that we enforce and that we investigate, there is no set tasks. It's going to vary from group to group and agent to agent. Some days I am in the office writing reports, and some days I'm out on surveillance, and there are days where I'm conducting community outreach to either our banking partners or our business partners through the IMAGE program.
To expound on what she said, she's right. There's nothing that we do on a consistent basis, except for we do have to, like I said before, we have to qualify with our guns, and we have to do defensive tactics. So on any given day, we can, like she said earlier, one day she can be doing one thing, and the next day she can be doing something else. So on any given day, I could be pulling, $1 million to give to an agent to further an investigation, or I can be acting like I'm his secretary in an undercover capacity.
Great, thank you. So we did have a follow-on question from an earlier discussion. How much are you expected to be away from home in performing your duties? Is there a lot of travel involved? And that's for all of our panelists.
Well, when you first get hired, you will have to go to the Federal Law Enforcement Academy, and that is 6 months for the special agent side and 4 months for the ERO side. You're away from your family, and it's kind of rigorous. When I was actually at the academy, my daughter got hit by a car, and it was very hard for me to focus, but I had a support system who actually came in and talked to me and, convinced me not to leave because they knew exactly, what I was there to do. I was there for a mission, and I got the mission done. But just do be prepared that as soon as you get hired, you're going to be away from your family 4 to 6 months. And then after that, it depends on the investigations or the cases that you work that will take you away from your family or from home periodically.
And for ERO, I would say that it really depends on your assignment. You can have a very steady schedule where you have set hours, but of course, you're accepting a job, hopefully with ICE, a federal law enforcement agency. You need to be prepared to be responsive 24/7. So just have that in the back of your mind. Again, it's a lifestyle change. You need to surround yourself with a good support group, support system, not just your family, but the friends that you surround yourself with. That'll be very important in times that you need to be away from your family, because that will happen. Sometimes you have plans and the work comes first, so you just need to be prepared to make that commitment.
Great, thank you. So, and as a follow-up to that question, we did get a question more specifically. What are the things that you do or have had to do to find a balance between having a family and if your parents being a parent and the work you do in law enforcement?
Okay, I have 4 children, and to find my balance, I like to travel. So because we are on call 24/7, I have to make sure that I have, I actually learned time management skills, because if you don't have them now, you will have them once you come in this position. It'll be forced upon you. So you have to learn how to manage your time, and when things get a little hectic at work, I just take a trip to the Caribbean. I love to travel, so that's my balance.
Great, thank you. Others?
Our job can be very demanding and rigorous at times, but like Agita said, you have to find a balance. Like my balance is, although I may work very long hours, I also train after work. Sometimes I try to train before work if I have that opportunity. And for me, my balance is running marathons, doing triathlons.
Wow. So I have to do push-ups and run marathons, just so I'm clear. Okay, so I'm way behind the curve. Got it.
You have to
Understood.
do it for fun.
Yes, and I have to enjoy all of these things. So
And we also do them as teams here in the job as well.
Okay.
And sometimes we do Spartans.
I don't know if you saw the team I walked in with. We're a little bit behind, but it's okay. We're gonna catch up. Well, did any others that you wanted to comment?
I try to spend as much time as I can with family and friends on my days off. And sometimes, my days off mean sitting in bed watching Netflix all day, decompressing. Sometimes I try to incorporate my work and personal life, and I enjoy running in team events, representing my agency, and participating in shooting competitions. Those are things that I like to do on my spare time, representing ICE.
And I will say, sometimes in your career, you're gonna have to kind of put one thing or the other on a back burner, unfortunately, just by the nature of our work demands. Sometimes you are going to have to work constantly without days off, but things eventually balance out, and I think it's always important to remember that your family and friends are there for you and that they are a support staff that you can lean on.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the questions that we've received for today. I do want to thank all of our panelists and the speakers for today. And for your participation and for your service. So thank you so much for being here with us. And I want to thank each of you for participating with us today. Just a brief reminder, you'll see again in the upper right hand of the screen, there should be a series of polling questions. Please take those polling questions. We do use that data for these events to improve these events for future participants. I also want to remind you that you can email us at academicengagement@hq.dhs.gov to submit any additional questions you might have had after today's event. And if you'd like to get information about future events and webinars where we'll be discussing other parts of the Department of Homeland Security. Please note that DHS looks forward to future engagements with students, and we want to invite you to participate with us. We do want to hear from you, so please reach out to us. I again thank each of our ICE presenters and thank all of our students, our recent graduates, faculty and career services folks, and the staff from our various universities, and welcome you to our future events. Thank you so much.